All right, good day to you all. I hope you guys are doing well. You doing okay? Good. And I can hear you on our online site as well. Just yell to the people around you and yell at all of our sites, all of our campuses, all over the greater Vancouver area, in Calgary, and starting out in Winnipeg and Toronto, and of course online. We're super excited about everything God is doing. If you have a Bible, John chapter 7, and my dear hope to the Lord God is that I can finish this chapter today. That was the intent last week, and anyway, it's it's my job to try to stay on point, and sometimes I fail, and you can fire me. So. Good to have you here. My name is Mark, by the way, for those of you who are new. I'm one of the pastors here at the church, and really good to have you. And I get the unique privilege of being able to teach the Bible to you. And we're in the Gospel of John. And literally as a church, we just kind of go verse by verse through books of the Bible and then bring it into our life, try to get the original meaning of the text, and then bring it into our life in the modern world. And if you're exploring Christianity and Jesus, love it, love that you're here. Kind of started a church for you to reach people like you, reach people like myself. I grew up as a skeptic. So welcome. And we have like this text now. Last week, we were talking about part one, part two of 4 types of people that kind of receive the message of Christianity. We're trying to say, find yourself in those types. And so last week, we talked about the convinced, and then we talked about the contrarian. And this week, we're going to talk about 2 different kinds of people that I think, some of you are going to find yourself in as you think about and consider Christianity. So let's jump into this and get started. Verse 42 of chapter 7 of the Gospel of John says this: "Has not the scripture said that the Christ comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was from?" And we talked about that last week. That's the contrarian pushing back, saying, I don't think I believe in Christianity. I don't think I believe in Jesus because he's not from all the places that we thought he was. And of course, he actually was. And we talked about the fact that sometimes our skepticism is unfounded. Sometimes our ideas about why we reject Christianity aren't actually based on fact, they're based on feeling, which is interesting because when data comes into our life, we tend to be defensive against it and go, I like what I already believe. So if that's you, the Bible would push back against you and challenge you and say, no, maybe you should consider Christianity. And then for this week, picking it up in verse 43, there's another type of person we'll get to. So there was a division among the people. So let me just talk about division for a second, because this is kind of a really interesting kind of division, because these people divide. So Jesus is kind of laying out his teaching, and the people divide. But they divide, notice what they divide over Jesus, over what he claims about himself, over his teachings, over who he says he was, versus the kinds of things that we divide over. So I'm gonna propose an interesting thesis, which is dividing over Jesus is actually kind of maybe some of the only division that should happen in your life, versus the kinds of things that we divide over. We divide over denominations and worship music and masks and vaccine and politics and family structure, all of these things that we divide over. And the Bible comes along and goes, no, there actually is a good thing to divide over, and that thing is Jesus. In fact, when Jesus was being born in Luke chapter 2, Mary goes and hangs out with this guy, and this guy prays kind of a prophecy over what the person of Jesus is going to do to the world. And listen to what he says in Luke chapter 2. It says, "And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, Jesus' mother, Behold, this child is appointed," listen to this, "for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed, and a sword will pierce through your own soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed." And so what he's saying is that there isn't just going to be a rising when it comes to Jesus. It's not that everyone's going to believe in him and everyone's going to follow him and everyone's going to love him. There's actually a falling that's going to take place. Some of you are going to stumble over Jesus. Some of you are going to struggle with Jesus. Some of you are going to be offended by the nature and the person and the work of Jesus and the church and Christianity as it comes to you, and it's going to divide something in you. We've got to understand that that's a good thing. Sometimes we need to create a division or a pressure or a tension in our own soul, as he's talking about to Mary. Even in your own soul, there's going to become this existential angst, and there should be, but it shouldn't be about it should be about Jesus, and that's in fact true, and you should chase that down. You shouldn't just pretend that's not real. You shouldn't say, well, there's division in my life, and there's tension, and there's conflict in my own soul, and there's conflict with people around the person of Jesus, and so I'm not gonna chase that down. No, you should chase that down. It's important to chase down truth, and so often in our culture, in order to survive relationships or whatever, we don't actually move toward division when it's legitimate. We just say, oh, let's try to get through dinner and let's just hang out as a family, even though what they're saying is crazy or even though what they're saying isn't true. We all just kind of go through dinner. And I remember, I think I've shared this with you before, when I was golfing with this guy one time and we were talking about Jesus, and he said, I don't want to believe in Jesus. And I said, why? And he said, because it creates division. And I said, yeah, but what if it's true? And he goes, but what's true for you is true for you. And we went through this whole equation. I asked him what he did. He said he works with, he's a banker and he works with numbers and money. And I said, okay, so is 2 + 2 always 4? He said, yes. I said, that's built into the mathematical reality of the universe. Yes. Okay, so what if somebody comes along and says it's 5? Like your daughter, he's telling me, what if she writes that on a test? He said, well, then it's 5 for her because I don't want to create division and push back in her life and actually force her. See, there's a good kind of division, and it's over him. Right? This is what it says. It's over Jesus. That's okay. And what we have to understand is not everybody necessarily agrees the same things about Jesus. I'll give you a list of what formal religions believe about Jesus. Buddhism, for instance, teaches that Jesus was not from God, but was an enlightened man like Buddha. Hinduism teaches that Jesus is an incarnation of God like Krishna. Islam teaches that Jesus was a prophet, but was inferior to Muhammad. Jehovah's Witnesses say that Jesus was merely the archangel Michael, a created being that became a man. Judaism believes he was a teacher, a rabbi, a failed prophet, but not the long-awaited Messiah. Mormonism believes that Jesus was only a man, became one of many gods, and that he was a polygamist and a half-brother of Lucifer. And New Age guru Deepak Chopra believes that Jesus is basically a state of consciousness in our minds, and we can all kind of go after the state of consciousness. I remember a day when some Mormon missionaries came into my house and obviously didn't know what I did for a living. And so they kind of came in and we had some tea, and I was trying to hide the fact that I was a Christian because I just wanted to ask them questions, and then they saw a Bible sitting over there, and so they go, oh, you're a Christian? I was like, shoot. And so we started to talk through this kind of stuff and about Jesus, and I asked them, who do you think Jesus is? And they kind of laid out this version of Jesus, and they said, so we're a Christian, and we're basically, it's the same thing. It's all the same sport. And I'm like, yeah, no, you believe Jesus is a polygamist and a half-brother of Lucifer. We're not even playing the same sport. We're not in the same ballpark. We're not even on the same planet. Of which, of course, Mormonism believes that we're going to get our own planets. And there's all kinds of different versions of Jesus. And of course, we have to sift through the ones that are actually historically accurate according to the scriptures, according to the Bible. This is the ultimate division for our lives, and we should chase it down. Larry King, years ago, the great interviewer, talked about if he could only interview one person in all of history. Someone asked him, who would it be? He said, without a doubt, Jesus. And they said, you only have a question to ask him. And he said, were you born of a virgin? And because the answer to that question changes everything about history, everything about my life. If Jesus Christ really was born of a virgin, was really God, everything about my life has to change. And we've got to understand dividing over that question, even in our own soul, is actually a good thing. I remember when I started thinking through Christianity and I started exploring it, I had all the different religious options before me. I had Jehovah's Witness missionaries talking to me and telling me to explore Christianity, and so I went and explored that. Mormon missionaries, all kinds of different religions that actually talked to me. I was actually dating a girl at the time, and she had Mormon missionaries living in her house, and I would just go and hang out, and we would work through theology, and then literally, during that time, I met Jesus in the scriptures. Like Augustine says that the Bible is the face of God for us now. And I have to tell you something, it was through the Bible that actually came to know Jesus. A guy kind of led me to it, and I would just sit and read the Bible outside my school. I'd walk around, I'd tell people about Jesus. This is where I've been. And so once I found him, then I went back to them, and we'd sit around till 1 or 2 in the morning, and they'd be like, well, this is what the Book of Mormon says. And I would say, no, this is what the Bible says. And we would have this debate, and that kind of division is good. Right? That's the point. You got to be able to press in, have the debate, actually talk about the true Jesus versus trading truth out just so we can all get along. Now, we have to do it with common decency. We have to do it with love. We have to do it with respect. We have to love and serve people, not divide and push them away because they believe something different than you about Jesus. Simply, we need to lean into it. And so it's like a sifting of ourselves and our ideas in order to get to the best ideas. So then, why does the Bible always tell us to have unity? It's constantly pushing us toward unity. And the answer to that is because we're, as the church, if we're clear on the question of who Jesus is, we shouldn't then be dividing over all the things we divide about. We have 35,000 denominations within Christianity. We have people fighting, infighting, yelling at each other, families up over what? Not over him, but over stuff. And that's not the kind of division the Bible actually wants us to have. And so here's some real talk, yo. We are living in one of the most divisive times in the last 100 years in the context of the church right now. There is a proclivity and a tendency to divide, not over him, but over stuff within the church. I'm not talking about the different religions. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about within the body of Christ, people are dividing. People are miserable. People are being critical. People are taking their ideas not over Jesus, over vaccines and over mask wearing and political ideologies and subsequent secondary, thirdary theologies that don't matter when it like people like, okay, you believe in the rapture? I can't be your friend anymore. You don't believe in the rapture? I can't be your friend anymore. You don't believe in this? I can't be We're dividing over stuff the Bible never tells us to divide about because we have this thing in us that everybody needs to be like us. And that's the poison. I got an email a couple weeks ago and it was like, I need to know whether you as Pastor Mark are vaccinated or not. All right, that was an email that came in. Whether you're vaccinated. Why? Oh, because I need to know that my leader represents what I do with my life. Let me tell you something. That is so flawed in your thinking. You don't need me to agree with you on everything. Believe me. You don't sleep on the same side of the bed that I do. That's a weird analogy. Sorry, that's it. You're like, if I was in bed with Mark, no. You don't enjoy the same coffee as I do, the same music, the same movies. We disagree. My wife and I disagree on most stuff. The movies she watched, whether Jennifer Aniston's a good actress, whether we should spank our kids. Yes, we should. We disagree on everything. It doesn't mean we divorce. This is what we've come to a place where it's like a leader has to represent all my ideas. See, this is the problem in modern Christianity. You're trying to live your Christian life vicariously out through me. Go and do it yourself. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Stop trying to, this is what we do though. We clench for a symbol because we lack faith sometimes in and of ourselves. And so we say, listen, we're not gonna agree on most stuff. Be okay with it. This is the beautiful part of the church, is the church disagrees on stuff. That's okay. It's Revelation 5. It's every tribe, tongue, nation gathered before the Lamb who is slain with different political opinions. The point of the church, if you read the book of Galatians, Paul is fighting the very spirit that says we all have to be this homogenous group of people that all look the same, vote the same, dress the same, act the same, talk the same, and he blows it up. And he goes, that is the wrong way to think about this. That was what Peter had done. Peter was a Jew. He went and started to hang out with Gentiles. And then when the Jews showed up from Jerusalem, read Galatians 2, Peter goes and he breaks table fellowship with the Gentiles and goes, hangs out with the Jews again. And Paul writes Galatians and he says, Peter, you have misunderstood not sociology, not community. You have actually misunderstood the gospel. Because you're trying to get everybody you're only gonna hang out with people like you. No, the church is this beautiful, messy, disastrous group of people who in their disagreements reflect the glory of Christ out into the world with a kind of unity that transcends all of these views, because then the church can look in and go, man, it actually blows my mind. You have all these different views, but you're one in Christ. And that's what I want to become a part of. There's something different about this group of people who can be from all races, all socio-political realities, all the money we make, the cars we drive, what we do for whether we homeschool or private school or public, all of these things, the gospel is the thing we unify around. And everything else then becomes secondary, because there are things, and why we tend to go down that route is because we have been pitched an individual version of Christianity, not a communal one. And so when you're pitched an individual version of community over and over and over and over again, like we've been doing in Western culture for the last 100 years, then all it is me and my Bible and Jesus, and that's it. Well, of course, you're gonna try to find a church that thinks like you, acts like you, looks like you, to the minutiae, because you've been told that you're the whole point of the story. But you're not. It's the collective. It's the communal reality of the group. This is why Jesus prays in John 17, Lord, Father, I want them to be what? One, so that the world may know. There's a missional effectiveness that is drawn out in the world because of the unity. Ephesians 4, the unity of the body, the bond of peace, the unity of the Spirit. There is one church, one baptism, one body, one Lord, one faith. That kind of unity. And everything else is secondary. So what is the stuff you divide over? Listen, in Christianity, there are what are called essential doctrines and non-essential doctrines, or primary, secondary doctrines, okay? So here's the difference. We divide over essential doctrines, okay? Primary doctrines, meaning the Bible is the authority of God. It's perfect. It's inerrant, it's perfect, it's without error. It is God's literal words to us in the modern world. The Bible is the authority. That is an essential Christian doctrine, that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven, that Jesus is God, that he's true. There's no other way actually gets to God. Heaven and hell are a real thing. These are primary doctrines, that Jesus' work on the cross is the only way to be saved, that he's the perfect Son of God, lived his life perfectly in your place, died on a cross for your sin, rose again. These are all essential, core, central doctrines that when you fall outside of them, you stop being a Christian. Right? So if I get up here next Sunday and go, you know what? The Bible, whatever, there's other books. This isn't the ultimate authority. Fire me. Amen. Right? He's excited. Fire that guy. Right? It's like, fire me, mute my microphone, whatever you need to do. But that's a primary, essential Christian doctrine. The Bible is our authority. Jesus is the only way. Heaven and hell are real. And the minute I start saying something different, I've fallen outside of what Christianity historically and in the present is. But then there are all these secondary things, non-essential doctrines, secondary doctrines, speaking in tongues. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is it legit? You got people who are like, you're not even a Christian unless you speak in tongues. Right? And then you have people who are like, tongues is made up. Tie my bow tie, should have bought a Honda, made up. And so which one is it? Some of you are still like, I don't know what he's talking about. All right, go look it up. So some of you, so which one? It doesn't matter. These are secondary. This is an in-house family conversation. Women in ministry, the end times, masks, vaccines, all of these things are all secondary, non-essential theological debates that we can have in-house. Just war versus pacifism, politics, whether you like Lord of the Rings or not. All of those things. So you have essential and you have non-essential. And as the great phrase goes, there's one writer who says this: in essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things, charity. There's a liberty in the non-essentials to believe different stuff and have those debates and have those discussions and walk away as friends versus dividing. Now, why is all this important? Because there's a kind of humility that arises when the church begins to go, maybe I don't know everything. Okay, can we just stop for a second and just admit, one of the great values of a Christian in the world is humility, and I'm not sure we're showing a lot of it right now. Humility, where you admit to yourself that you don't know everything. You know that, right? You aren't omniscient. You don't have all the information. You lack so much information, and yet you get so dogmatic about views, about things that you don't know. There has to be a kind of humility. You are like the guy. Listen, go read Mark 8 later today. Jesus heals a guy, touches him, and he says, you're blind, can you see? And the guy says what? I can see, but I can see people kind of like trees. They're fuzzy to me. And Jesus needs to touch him again, and he heals him. Listen, for most things in life, you are the guy who sees things like trees walking around. It's fuzzy. The information is not all there. It's not super clear on everything. And there's a kind of humility that comes in your life when you admit you're kind of seeing stuff fuzzy. It's not always clear, right? There has to be, listen, this week, I was letting you into my life, man. It's a disaster zone right now. Like, I am one of you. All right, my life, the last 2 weeks, like Aaron's dad ends up in the hospital in Toronto, ICU, lots of problems, lots of issues. You can pray for him. That happens, then my dog Kenzie starts throwing up all over the house, and so many times that it was like right now, even in the midst of this, she's going through it, and we don't know what to do. We don't know if we don't know what's gonna. So we took her to the animal hospital 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, and so every day she goes in for these IVs, and it costs money, and I'm on the phone, and the kids are crying, and my wife can't even ask the big questions because she's so close to this dog, so I gotta, go out and call the doctor and go and talk, like all of this stuff every single day through this big birthday party, just pressure, stress, strain, constant, and listen, in those moments, guys, I don't walk around the office singing and dancing and being my normal, like I'm heavy. And that's okay, because I don't have all the information. And when I don't have all the information, I don't call the doctor and tell him what to do with my dog or my father-in-law. I just humbly go, I don't have things are fuzzy to me right now, and so I'm just gonna kind of walk without much swagger, without much ego, and I'm gonna depend on God for my strength. And so often we function in life, we're just walking, we think we see things super clear, and we don't. And here's the beautiful freeing part of all of this. Listen, the church, we can be freed up to come together and be unified and not divide, because we can just all admit we're seeing half. And that's okay. It's the most freeing thing in the world to just go, I don't know. I do Q&As all the time. My wife and I did a Q&A a few months ago on this marriage stage, and people are asking us all these wacky questions. I'm talking about detailed sexual questions. Like, what about this? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, is there a Bible verse for this? I'm like, I'm sure if you gave me enough time, I could find one. But I don't know. The kind of humility is needed and super freeing because we come together as the church and we go, okay, let's just admit we don't know everything and love one another anyway. You know, there's 30 one another's in the New Testament. Love one another, serve one another. And it ain't based on being perfect. And it ain't based on all having the same views on everything. The church is a group of people. It's pretty messed up, to be honest. And that's okay. Listen to the words. Eugene Peterson wrote a book years ago called Reverse Thunder. Eugene Peterson passed away a few years ago now, but it's an amazing book. And in it, he says this: the church is to the gospel what the body is to the person. Under the conditions of our creation, it's necessary, but it's not the thing itself. The body can be abused by overeating or by overwork. It can be maimed by an accident or by disease. Still, it is necessary. Much anger towards the church and most disappointments in the church are because, listen to this, of failed expectations. It's the same in your marriage, right? I've said this before, like if you're struggling in your marriage and you can't figure out how to solve it, just drop your expectations and you'll thrive. We expect, he says, listen to this, in the church, we expect a disciplined army of committed men and women who courageously lay siege to the worldly powers. Instead, we find some people who are more concerned with getting rid of the crabgrass in their lawns. We expect a community of saints who are mature in their virtues of love and mercy, and find ourselves working on a church supper where there's more gossip than there are casseroles. We expect to meet minds that are informed and shaped by the great truths and rhythms of Scripture. And we find people whose intellectual energy is barely sufficient to get them from the comics to the sports page. At such times, it is more important to examine and change our expectations than to change the church. For the church is not what we organize, but what God gives. Not the people we want to be with, but the people God gives us to be with. A community created by the descent of the Holy Spirit in which we submit ourselves to the Spirit's affirmation, reformation, and motivation. There must be no idolization of the church. You drop your expectations and you begin to be humble and realize the one another's can be lived out even when we don't disagree on everything. Okay, that was literally half a verse. I'm in trouble. Okay. Some of them wanted to arrest him. That's part of the division. Some people want to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. No one touched him. The officers, I love this, by the way. How many of us, see, this is why we get in trouble. How many of us have a picture of Jesus in our minds that doesn't really equate with a guy who would ever be arrested? Like, some people wanted to arrest this guy. This isn't meek, mild. This is like arrestable. Enemy of the state, Jesus, who needs to be shut up. Revolutionary. And some of us have a version of Christianity where we take no risks and it's not dangerous at all. It's just comfortable. And that's not the kind of Jesus that we follow. We follow a risky Jesus, a Jesus who, like, I was watching this documentary the other day called The Alpinist, where the guy just climbs these crazy, actually started in Squamish here in BC, and climbs with these crazy rocks, and he has no ropes, and he just swings around and jumps on stuff, and then he does it on ice, and he does the ice pick, and people are like, this guy has no fear. And one of the comments in the thing is, if you don't have the option to die, all of this is useless. When you come out the other side, if there was no option to die, what's the point of ever doing it? And that's the kind of version of Christianity that we see. If there's not this kind of tension where you're like, man, I follow a guy who got arrested. So the question is, are you willing to live a risky kind of Christianity where you follow a guy who was crucified, or do you just create the comfort of doing the Saturday chores, come to church on Sunday, you move on with your life, but you don't love and serve him? Like, think about the way you could live with money. What if you lived a crazy, risky life with money? What if the money you had, you gave it away? What if you took your stuff and just, like, instead of hoarding it, like a bunch of people who think that you can drag a U-Haul to your funeral and you keep it and you keep it and you keep it and you hoard it because who knows if there's going to be a day when we need it? Who knows? Give it away. This week, crazy, I gave away money to a guy, way more money than he needed for a thing. It's a long story, it doesn't matter. He needed a thing, I gave him whatever more than he needed, okay? Moved on with my life. Then the Kenzie thing happens, and I'm just pushing out money that I don't have to keep the dog alive. And then we go in to the animal hospital, and someone, and I only told 2 or 3 people about this, someone has put money into our animal hospital account. And it was none of those people because I went back to them. So I don't know if angels are walking around these days and just walking in, this person's like, well, all this is paid for because this person came in for her pills. It's been put in your account. It's like, guys, give stuff away, and I dare you to give it away and see if God brings it back tenfold to you. I dare you, but you're so lame. You risk nothing, you give nothing, you hoard, you're cheap. Okay, welcome to Village. But you gotta follow him in a way of arrest him. Okay, we gotta get to these 2 other kinds of people. So last week was the skeptic, the contrarian, and the committed. Now this week, here's the 2 kinds of people we see. The first kind of person is the confused. And some of you are right there, and sincerely, you're in a place of confusion about Jesus and confusion about Christianity. Start at verse 45. That's these people. The officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees. So these guys are like the religious rulers of the time. They're the pastors, the theologians. So the officers who were sent then came back to them because they were sent to suss out Jesus, who said to them, why did you not bring him? Basically, we sent you to get Jesus and bring him here. What's your deal? The officers answered, I love this, no one ever spoke like this man. Guys, like, I wish, there's like this practice that the history of the church has done where they take a passage of the Bible and they read like a passage and they do it like 5-6 times in a row. It's called Lectio Divina. And you sit and you hear the same story like 5 times, and every time you do it, you prayerfully hone in on another section, maybe a word, a phrase, and you just zone out the rest of the reading and you just hone, and it's just beautiful. I remember I did it a bit ago, and the story of Jesus walking on the water, and stuff like rose that I never even thought of, like some word that somewhere else, boom. If I could do it, man, this would be the phrase. Like, we just blow by these sentences. No one ever spoke like this man. Think about how amazing he is. No one ever spoke like we went to hear him teach so we can bring him back to you, and you could arrest him and say he's not a good prophet, he's not a good teacher, and we heard him talk, and we were all floored. No one ever spoke like this man before. Dallas Willard says that Jesus Christ is the smartest man who ever lived. That's not often how we talk about Jesus. And right now, I just want to hone in on how beautiful and amazing Jesus is and lift up Jesus. No one ever spoke like this man. Literally, it says, no man ever like this has spoken. It's like, think of all the pharaohs, all the Caesars, all the musicians, the artists, the scientists, the politicians. No one ever has spoken like this man. No one's as smart, articulate, and that is literally my story. Like I said earlier, reading the words of Jesus in the Bible is the thing that totally transformed my life and took the whole direction of my life and changed it, because no one ever spoke like this man. No one compares to Jesus. The greatest teacher I've ever known is a guy named Steve Thompson. My first year of Bible college, I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. A group of people came around me and said, you need to go to Bible college. So I showed up to Bible college, no idea what to do, no idea where I was gonna go. I was 19, 20 years old. And I walked in, and the first semester I walked into a class called Christian Life and Discipleship with a guy named Steve Thompson. And one of the things he talked about struck me and blew my life up. And so I went to him in his office one day and I said, sir, can you mentor me? And he said, no, I'm not gonna mentor you, but I'll be your friend, which is brilliant, by the way. Because some of us view ourselves, yes, I shall mentor you. like you're Yoda or something. You're not. You need to be a friend to someone and show them what you do, right? And so Steve Thompson, for the next 4 years of my life, poured into me. We would sit at 6, I'd arrive, we both lived an hour and a half from the school. We'd arrive at 6 and sit and pour over the text. He'd assign me, the class would have like 4 books to read, and I'd go read 9. And I'd come back and we'd work through this and work through that. Year 1, year 2, we'd go out, Swiss Chalet. Those of you in Toronto, you know all about Swiss Chalet. So you'd go to church on Sunday and you'd go to Swiss Chalet, and then we'd go out, we'd sit around the text till midnight. For what? I wasn't paying him. There was nothing in this for him. And he poured into me, and then I remember he came to me and he said, I want you to do a lecture at the school. You have an hour and a half to teach John 15, and this was to all my peers. And then he got me to a 3-hour lecture on the resurrection. He started getting me to mentor students and be a TA and mark their papers and work with them. Changed the whole direction of my life. Made me stop wanting to be a pastor and become a teacher. And then I came out here and that all changed. So, and that's what I was gonna do. And I remember, and every person in the school, if you were to ask anybody who went to the school for his 25 years of teaching, he was the best teacher in school. Steve Thompson, he changed my life, And one day, somebody walked into his office and said, you have all these books about Jesus. Why do you have all these books about Jesus? And he said, simply, he just kind of looked up one moment, he just goes, because he's the most important. Think about all the stuff you spend your time and energy and money and thought and conversation on. If you took the economy of your time, what do you spend it on? And these guys, they got to see Jesus, man, face to face. And when they saw him and they met him, they went, there's no one like him. He's the most important. He's the one that will change your life, not sitting around scrolling Instagram, wasting your life away. Read the words of Jesus. They're better than whatever politician you're following. No one ever spoke like this man into your life, even in the now. He still speaks, and the sheep hear the voice of the shepherd. That's what he says in John 5. He's the greatest teacher. This group of people who are confused about Jesus, and maybe that's some of you, at least they're sincere. They go, no one spoke like this man. The Pharisees answered them, have you also been deceived? I love this. This is, by the way, if you decide, if you're one of the confused, like sincerely confused and just going, man, I don't know about Jesus yet, but I'm interested, I'm exploring, I'm kicking it around. I can guarantee you this is gonna be the response of people in your life. You've been deceived. You're a joke. You're part of a cult. We're gonna not hang out anymore. What a loser. You believe in sky fairies. You believe in gods that you can't see, because everything about this person's life, and maybe this is you, to some point you've just been like, I don't know, I trust things I can see, taste, touch, smell, and you're asking me to believe in God and a Jesus I've never met, and a Bible, a book that I don't really, it's kind of weird. I'm not really sure about it. There's things in it that are teaching me weird things about heaven and hell and how to be, I gotta be faithful to my wife. I gotta do this with money and how to do all this counterintuitive stuff, and I'm just not really sure what to do about it. I love this about Jesus, though. Comes along and he says, love your enemy and pray for them. That's so difficult. I remember in high school, there was a guy, and he would just make fun of me constantly because of my faith in Jesus. And usually what happens, I didn't grow up in like the hood or whatever, but I didn't grow up in a perfect scenario either. And in those scenarios growing up, like a guy makes fun of you, you meet him at 3:30 at the fence to fight. Right? That's what I didn't fight. I had lots of friends who would fight for me, but that's what you do. Not gonna happen. But I can woo other people to do the bidding. So that's what you do. You just fight, so that's what you meet me at 3:30, I'll fight you, punch your face in. But then I'm reading Jesus and he's like, you can't do that anymore. You gotta love your enemy and pray for those who pray. And I started dating Erin, and all my buddies are like, oh man, she's hot. She was modeling at the time. We started dating. She was singing up at the front. I'm like, my gosh, church is the best. I'm gonna stay at church. I love church. And we started dating, and my buddies meet Erin. They're like, oh man, so what are you doing? Like, how's loving and blah, blah. I'm like, bro, I can't sleep with her till we're married. They're like, what are you talking about? We will. And so I'm reading the Bible, it's all counterintuitive. And so I was confused, like some of you. It just didn't make immediate sense. And I'm here to say that's okay. But here's what I would ask you to do. Lean into it honestly like these guys do. Lean into it, not away from it. Because if you lean into it, I promise you, God will show up and reveal himself to you. I promise you. When I was preaching in San Diego a couple weeks ago, I was preaching their Sunday service, and I started telling these wacky stories about, because they don't know me, stories you've heard a million times about me smoking outside the school and reading the Bible and talking about how I used to smoke in front of the pastor's office because I didn't know, and I flicked my cigarettes, and the whole worship team's praying for me as they're looking at me every Sunday. And I didn't know it was his office. I'm like, they're all like, oh God, please save this kid. So, and I'm telling all those stories. And then this kid just walks up to me at the end. He's 25 years old, and he just reeks like cigarettes. And he walks up to me, and he's bawling. He's got this big jacket on, and he's just crumbling, and he's holding me. And he's like, I can't explain. I'm confused about Jesus, but I'll tell you this. I haven't walked into a church in 10 years. I don't even live in San Diego. I was visiting my grandmother. And I said, oh, here we go, this classic story. Grandma grabs the kid. You gotta come to church, honey. No, Grandma's not here. I was driving by, and I felt compelled to come in here. I haven't been in church 15 years of my life. I was visiting my grandma from Denver someplace, and I walked in here feeling useless, feeling like I have these things about my life that no church is gonna accept. And something just happened when you were preaching that changed me on the spot. Questions I had last night sitting in my bed were answered. Things you said, you don't even understand. And he was still in a state of confusion, but at least he leaned in, and when he did, God showed up. And that's not even the first time that happened. I was speaking at a conference in Toronto a few years ago. I'm preaching to this guy walks up to me at the end bawling, and he's like, dude, I am a pastor of a ministry. I would have my resignation letter in the car. I was quitting my church and quitting ministry and potentially quitting Christianity. Was driving by this church and felt compelled to walk in. Now, this is a conference. It costs like $300 to get in. The guy goes, so I walked in the door. It's like a tractor beam. I took a name tag off a hook. He's like, this is not my name. I'm like, really, Sarah? He's like, this ain't my name. I walked in here and took it off the hook, and I ripped up my resignation letter the moment you said amen. And you've given, what you said, not you, what you said has given me a new lease on ministry, on Christianity. I don't even know why I came in here. I have no idea who any of these people are. Listen, confused, sure, but leaning in, not away from. And that's an okay place to be. And I hope if you're one of those people, you're leaning in versus away. Now, some of you are like, yeah, but what about my past addictions? Do they make me look irresponsible? What about the fact that I'm divorced? What about my eating disorder? Guys, see, what happens sometimes to the confused, it's not ideological or political or theological or philosophical. It's like life, it's circumstantial, and then you stay away because circumstances make you feel like you're not good enough. Don't let me tell you something. That is a satanic distraction. He wants to make you think you're not good enough to be a Christian. He wants to make you think. And you know what? I was listening to this speaker a bit ago. Her name is Megan Fate Marshman. And she's a preacher at a big church in Chicago, a couple other places. And her husband passed away this past year. He was an ER doctor. And she told this story. She says, my husband, when people would come in for surgery, they'd be nervous. And they would think that they're not ready, and they would think that things aren't going to go good. And so my husband would play. He would look up how old they were, and over the speaker system in his doctor's office, he would play the song that was number one when they were 21 years old. Because when you're 21 years old, you lock, according to psychologists, you lock that away. You're like that. And so he plays it in order to bring relaxation. And he looks them in the face as they're nervous, and he sits right in front of them and he says this, I'm really good at my job, and I need you to trust me. And then the person starts looking around the office at all the stuff, right? The cancer poster and the needles, and he goes, hey, look at me, look me in the eye, look me in the eye. I want you to focus right here. I'm really good at my job. And you're gonna walk out of here, you're gonna be healthy. No, look at me. Calm. You're gonna focus on me right now, and then we're gonna go into the surgery, and I'm really good at my job, and I need you to trust me. No, don't look over here. Look at me. And people will be calm. And then she said, some of you right now are living a life where you are so distracted by the things of the world, and I just want to look at you and have the Father sit in front of you and go, hey, look at me. Stop it. Look it. I'm really good at my job. Stop looking to your past, to the mistakes you've made, to the things you've done. No, don't listen to that person. Look at me. I'm really good at my job, and I want you to stop. Stop looking over there. Stop thinking about all these things that disqualify you from being a Christian. I want you are my beloved, in whom I am well pleased, and I'm really good at what I do. Let me run the universe, and you can stop it now. So for those of you who are confused, not necessarily philosophically, but because of the circumstances of your life, I want you to say, stop looking around at all the things and look at Jesus, the one who speaks like no other man speaks. Let him change your life. The last group of people is a group of people called the contemplatives. Remember I said there was 4 C's? They all came from a commentary I was reading. So you had the convinced and the contrarians and the confused. And the last group, and I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on it, is the contemplatives. These are the people, listen to verse 48. Have any of the authorities of the Pharisees believed in him? So that's the Pharisees. But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. Nicodemus, here's our example of the contemplative, who had gone to him before. This was in John chapter 3, 18 months before, who was one of them, said to them, does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does? Can we just give this guy a chance? Can we just sit? Now, here's the contemplative mindset, and the church is classically not really good at the contemplative. The contemplative is less the scientist and more the artist. You notice how like artists don't always find a place in the church? This is why sometimes I'm a bad pastor, by the way, because I'm less a scientist and more an artist. And people are talking to me about their problems, and all I want to do is like, go watch a movie. Because I'm an artist. I'm not like, this isn't, like I try to, but people who are artists and think like the contemplatives don't find their place in church oftentimes. I'll give you a great example of why they don't. A month or two ago, I did a clip for church. It was like a 4-minute clip of a movie called Baraka. And it had all these different worship expressions, like these people in these different cultures, and they're worshiping gods, and they're doing. And I'm setting it up to preach on like John 4, which is like, you know, everybody tries their own worship, but Jesus is the true way. And I just start getting emails from people like, this is like false idolatry. It's like, don't we, like, why is everything on the nose all the time for you? Isn't there any artistic ability for us to understand why someone would show a clip or write a particular song or paint a particular thing or do a film in a particular way that makes you think deeply? Listen, here's the thing about Nicodemus. It takes him, he doesn't become a believer in Jesus until chapter 19. So we see him in 3, now we see him in 7. He doesn't become a believer in Jesus till 19, and then he's a secret disciple. This is what's awesome. He's a contemplative man. He takes his time, he thinks, and in modern Twitterverse, he would probably be canceled for being a secret disciple. Because you gotta be a loud, expressive disciple to be a true believer. Nicodemus thinks it through. He goes, what are the circumstances of my life? And I gotta think through how this leads me to a particular place. And that's true about all of us to some degree, but there's those of you here, you're less thinker all the time and you're feeler. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that emotional investment in your own existential reality can actually lead you to God. Think about that. I was listening, my kids love Taylor Swift, and I was listening to one of her songs the other day. She wrote it when her mom got a cancer diagnosis. If you go listen to this song, and part of the words, it starts like this. The buttons of my coat were tangled in my hair, in doctor's office lighting. I didn't tell you I was scared. That was the first time we were there. Holy orange bottles, each night I pray to you. Desperate people find faith, so now I pray to Jesus too. And I say to you, soon you'll get better, because you have to. Taylor Swift looks for Jesus in times of emotional trauma. She's not gonna find it if she just approaches life from a secular, atheistic, agnostic perspective. She only can find it in God. As you. This is, again, why I'm not like, there's people that think my job should be this. Listen, even friendships, guys, so I go on this golf trip a little bit ago with this whole like group of 15 guys. And I leave and I'm driving my buddy back after like 3 or 4 days of this, and he goes, man, like, what do you think about what we do the whole time? And I'm like, I'm bored. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, think about what we talk about. Okay, these 15 guys. You know what we talk about the whole time? Sports betting. Sports betting. Cars. Oh, cars. Boats. Real estate. Statistics. Guys, every single thing. Most of the groups of people I hang out with, I could care less about. All I'm thinking about the whole time, they're talking about all this, man, they do, man, we're gonna get a new Range Rover. I'm like, guys, all I wanna go is figure out, I wanna talk about films. I wanna talk about what's the next Denis Villeneuve film and who's the cinematographer working on it. Guys, for a living, I literally memorize movie speeches and soundtracks. I walked into a guy's office one time. He has this radio playing, and it's just instrumental music. And I walked into his office. I go, hey, I wanted to get something. And it's just a piano playing. I'm like, oh, that's the Meet Joe Black soundtrack. He's like, what? No, this is just an instrumental radio station. I go, no, that's the Meet Joe Black soundtrack. What are you talking about? And he gets up and he goes, if that's actually true, you're insane. And he walks up to it and he looks, and it says, Meet Joe Black. He's like, how, what did it say? 2 seconds ago was Mozart. I'm like, right, I memorized that one too. It's like, my point in saying this is like, this is actually my passion. Most things that most people and the contemplatives feel left out sometimes in the church. That's my point. Because everyone's talking about stuff they don't care about. But there is a place for you in the context of following Jesus. And it might mean that you take a little slower than other people, but the fastest person doesn't always win the race. Compare Nicodemus to Judas. One got to the end and one started quickly and early and didn't take much convincing at all. Now, for all of this, guys, let me end this way. For all of this, the miracle of this is that it's not about the type of person. It's about the one seeking all 4 types. It's about him, not you and your uniqueness. he finds and seeks and saves and restores all four kinds of people. But it's about him. And I'll leave you with this before I pray for you. I read a story. You know, my favorite preacher, maybe in history, is a guy named Charles Spurgeon. Okay, alive in the 1800s, Spurgeon was they call him the Prince of Preachers. Big beard. Doesn't even think you're a Christian man if you don't have a beard. Smoked a big pipe, preached his guts out at a Baptist church. They don't let you do that anymore at a Baptist church. I looked it up. So, but anyway, and he had like the first mega church, man, like 10,000 people in London in the 1800s, Charles Spurgeon. Crazy story, amazing story. Suffered a ton, crazy story. Anyway, listen. Charles Spurgeon had tried all these different things to answer his existential angst. He had tried mysticism and he'd tried moralism, religion, all these different things. And one day, it was a super snowy day in London. And he shows up to a church, and because it was so snowy, nobody could get to the church. So it was him and one other guy in the pews. So picture this, big church, echoey, him and one other guy sitting in the pews. And it was so snowy, the pastor couldn't get to church. And so they got one of the elders, just a random guy who could walk there, to preach that day. So he gets up in the pulpit, and he's never preached a day in his life. He's just terrible. And he gets up, and he opens up his passage from the book of Isaiah, and the passage says, you know, look to me, and I will heal you, all nations. And the elder gets up shaking behind the pulpit, and he just looks out at these two guys, and he just says, look to me, and I will heal you, all nations. And he just, because he has nothing to say, just keeps repeating it over and over and over and over again for 15 straight minutes. Look to me, and I will heal you. Look to me. And then after 15 minutes, he stops, and he looks at Spurgeon. This is a true story. And he points at him and he says, you son. Now this is why you guys like the video sites or whatever, because I can't see you. I can see you. And I might start pointing at people just for fun. But this guy goes, look, you there, you're miserable. And Spurgeon looks up at him. He goes, you're miserable. And your misery is never going to go away until you obey my text. Look at me. Look at him. Stop looking at yourself. Look at him and he will heal you. Look at him. And he just keeps saying it over and over and over again. And in that moment, Charles Spurgeon gets converted. Because he said, I was looking at myself and the world and the circumstances, and then this text drew me to look at him, look at him, look at him, and he will heal me. It didn't mean I had to do anything. He had already done it in the cross. He'd already done it. So, Father, I pray that all of our pride and thinking would be dissolved in your presence and that we would look to you. All four of these types of people that are represented in this text, as they're listening to this, as they're watching this, as they're sitting in their seats at all these sites, that we would look to you, not ourselves, not to people, not to circumstances, not to moralism, not to mysticism, but to you, Jesus, the one who has accomplished what we could never accomplish. And let us worship in response to it. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.